Good day, my friends. Happy to see you. Today is a big day. My book, What Happened to Catholicism, that's a different book. Here it is. They're both available. What Happened to Catholicism has been released. Long last, this has been the most arduous process and the most rewarding process, I might add, to get this thing done. And I must say, of all the books that I've written, although I am young, and depending on who you ask, if you ask a Zoomer, maybe I'm a little older than them. If you ask a Gen X, I'm a young guy. I'm in the middle. This is the book that I put my heart and soul into, and it is, I would say this book is my magnum opus. And this book is now available from Sophia Press through the Crisis imprint. You can check out the link for that down underneath if you are watching on YouTube. If you are on Twitter watching this, I'm not actually sure if the link is there, but I'll double check that at some point. In any event, you can go to sophiainstitute.com, sophiainstitute.com, and then the thing is on the website. Okay, so this book is on the heresy of modernism, and I want to give a general overview of the book today. But at the same time, I just want to open it up to questions. I don't get to do these live streams very often. Quite frankly, it's just not something that often works with my schedule. But I get to today because here we are. So, the book. Well, in 1907, Pope Pius X released an encyclical letter called Pascendi Dominici Gregis. And in fact, you can find this encyclical letter on the Vatican website. And I'll bring that up for you right now, actually. And it was written to the bishops of the world. And here it is here. It was written to the bishops of the world. And the purpose of it was to define the heresy of modernism. And so he addressed this encyclical to the bishops, as I said, and he outlined the doctrines of the modernists. Now, what is modernism? Well, that's the crux of the matter, isn't it? And sorry, I'm just trying to get the sizing of this all proper here. I don't know why it's so difficult for me to get it in. 1 second. There you go. And it was, in the mind of Pope Pius X, the heresy of modernism was the most disastrous, awful heresy that had ever befallen the church. And I think he was correct. And I'm not going to go through the encyclical here on this episode. That's why I wrote the book, which you can find, again, down underneath if you're interested. And what I did is I looked at this encyclical, and, you know, it's pretty intense. There's a lot of amazing information in here. It's very detailed, a lot of philosophical language, and so on and so forth. And in this encyclical, Pius X is talking about something that attacks the very root of the life of the church, that he says would actually destroy religion itself, not just Catholicism. And as I was reading it, I thought to myself, if this is true, then I should probably see if this is still alive and well, or if it ever went away. And a little background, Pius X writes this encyclical in 1907, or publishes it then, and it's pretty successful. There was a strong condemnation of it. It sort of sent a saber rattle throughout the institutions of the church and so forth. But then something disastrous happened. Within a few years, you have the First World War. And the First World War was the suicide of Europe in many ways, and it was a death blow to what was left of the old order, which Pius X was trying to hold on to. And the effect on the church cannot be underestimated. The communist upheavals that took place in various parts of Europe. Thank you, Upon This Rock, for that, ordering this book. The communist upheavals that took place, the totalitarian rule that took place, the changes to institutions. You got to remember, the church was reeling after a century of revolution, beginning in France, more or less, and then going through the various Western European nations. And over the century, the institutions themselves had been largely taken over by the governments, and they had become distinctly anti-clerical. And this had taken place in even places like Italy. And Pope Pius X was combating this heavily when he was a bishop, especially in Venice. And was it Mantua, the other spot? I think it was Mantua. And he was fighting the Freemasons who ran the town and things like that. Like, it was a whole thing. And he was going toe-to-toe with these liberals that were trying to keep religion out of the schools and whatnot. Obviously, in Italy, the only religion was Catholicism, so it wasn't like religious liberty in the broad sense, but it was like the liberty of the church, which is truly Catholic. And so the war comes, and the suicide of Europe destroys the seminaries, destroys the universities. It's just horrendous. You can imagine all the money. You can imagine all the destruction. You can imagine all the political upheaval, all these things. You combine this with the communist revolutions and whatnot. Now we're in a position after the First World War where Europe is in a state of total recalibration. And you have pretty valiant popes like Pius XI who do his best, not perfect, but does a good job, gives us the social kingship of Christ, sort of officialized with Quas Primas and so forth. It's the 100th anniversary of that. You have some bright spots. And then you have World War II. And you have just, it was like if Christendom was on life support, it was they pulled the plug fully. And from there, you see the dawn of the liberal era. And what happens in those intervening years between the pontificate of Pius X, who dies at the outset or the onset of the First World War, and the Second Vatican Council, you have this slow march to the institutions of the modernists who sort of change their tune and lay in waiting. They're hiding. And they sort of start to slither around and do things in a more secretive way. And by the time it's the eve of the council after the Second World War, there's a lot of damage control going on by Pius XII. He puts out Humani Generis. He puts out a lot of great encyclicals. He tries to deal with some of these dissident theologians like Teilhard de Chardin and so forth, and tries to put them in their place, but there's already so much rot in the hierarchy. The men like Pope Paul VI, Monsignor Montini, who became Pope Paul VI, who are very much liberals. Jacques Maritain had already sort of transitioned from being sort of the staunch kind of Thomist to the more like integral humanist. This is all explained in the book. And you have this unwinnable battle from an institutional perspective, and modernism rears its ugly head in other ways. And this culminates with the revolution that happens through the Second Vatican Council. And I prove that in the book. My friend Tim Flanders, I love him very much. And he says sometimes in the traditional Catholic world, there is a lack of, let's say, sophistication or excellence in the commentary. And I'll concede that point to my good friend. I don't think it's true in the higher echelon of stuff, but I think he has a point in the sense of sort of the popular dissemination of things. A lot of the time in the traditional Catholic world, it's like Vatican II is the worst and everyone's a modernist and blah, blah, blah. And it's all the, they did it. And they're the enemy's here and the enemy's there. And while I believe that's true, don't get me wrong, it's also the case that if we're going to be presenting a defense of Catholic tradition against modernism, we have to do it in a way that is worthy of readership. We have to do it in a way that's not just preaching to the choir. It's not to compromise. It's not to be soft, but we got to explain, and we have to take our time. This book is 300 pages. I spent a long time writing it and did everything I could to present a book that I'm sure I'll have critics. I think the two places where I'm going to get the most heat, it's going to be from people who really love personalism / phenomenology, and they're going to be mad that I even said personalism / phenomenology, and if you read the book, you'll understand why. And the lovers of the new theology, Nouvelle Théologie, they're going to be the most upset with me. So be it. And I did my best. But this book is 300 pages long. It's meticulously cited. I spent about a year writing the thing, but really this book is the culmination of my entire life's work to this point in my short 37 years on this planet. And, I want to tell you guys a personal story. I think there's providence behind this book, and I won't give too many details away, but there's a priest that I dedicate this book to, and April 15th is a very special anniversary for many reasons. And I did not know that. And I showed this priest friend of mine that I dedicated the book to that it was being released on April 15th. And he said, did you know that this is April 15th? And I won't reveal the personal side of it. And I thought, oh my goodness. And it had to do with something very profound. And I do hope that this book has, I hope that you will consider getting this book, not because I want to make a buck. Obviously, we have to be paid for the things that we do. But listen, you don't get rich you don't write 300-page books on modernism because you'd like to buy a Ferrari. Let's just put it that way. It's, the compensation is fine and all those sorts of things. We make these choices in life, but this is not a book on politics. This is not a book on conspiracy. This is not a book on, the new iPhone or something that's going to sell 1 million copies. That's just not what it is. But I put my heart and soul in it because, as I've written these last few books over the last few years, I wrote my book on masculinity. I wrote my fiction. I wrote my book on the SSPX. I wrote my book on the charismatic renewal. And I realized, and my charismatic renewal book, you can find that if you go to kennedyhall.ca/books, by the way. I realized as I'm writing all these books, having these conversations about Catholic tradition, it's impossible to have conversations about Catholic tradition, about the Society of St. Pius X, all these kinds of things. Thank you, Vinicius. It's impossible because this modernism, which you'll understand if you read the book, has just captured minds. And I thought to myself, yes, it's important to talk about the society. Yes, it's important to talk about the various heresies and the new mass and stuff, for sure. But at a certain point, we have to go to the root, and Pius X says the root is modernism. He talks about it as being a noxious weed that has infested every layer of the church, that will be the destruction of civilization and so forth. And I said to myself, well, if he was right, then he's right. And I think he was. And I do my best to present his work and explain it in layman's terms here. So I thought I would open it up. Matthew says, I'll be getting a job here soon. I'm graduating. I'll be able to buy your books shortly. Take your time. But congratulations on graduating. I will also say this as well. For parishes and so forth, and let me just make sure I get the information properly for you here. For parishes, bookstores, and whatnot, if you do want to buy cases of it, there's actually a way to do that at a significantly discounted rate. It's 50% off. So here's how it works. So authors, if you get 32 cases or 32 cases, 32 books or more, that's 50% off. That's $9.50 per book. And the shipping is roughly $20 a case or so, depending on where it's being shipped in the continental U.S. It can be shipped to Canada as well, though. I don't think it's tariffed. And as far as how you do that, let me just find out for you here. In order to get the discount for buying cases, excuse me. Well, you know what? I'll put the link underneath when I find it. I want to make sure I give you the right email. In any event, you can contact Sophia. I'm sorry I don't have the thing for you there, but if you want to buy cases, you can do that. And if we do contact Sophia Press, yeah, I'll put the link for contacting Sophia Press. And I mean, you can call them and you can email them. They have a customer service, whatever. If you just ask, you say, hey, Kennedy Hall was talking about X, Y, and Z. I'll actually put that in the chat right there. You can just contact. The only reason I'm giving this email is because there's a few emails on the sheet and I didn't want to give away the wrong one publicly. And Early Christian Beliefs says, I hope to get the audiobook as I am a driver. I recorded the audiobook. I've had a few people listen to it to check it and stuff, and they said they loved it. The audiobook will be available ASAP. It has been submitted. It has been approved and so forth. But when you upload to places like ACX, which is what handles Audible, and the various places they go to, Everend is one of them. Spotify has books, iTunes books, the various places you listen to your audiobooks. There's an approval process that takes a certain amount of business days. That's out of our control, but the book has been submitted, so stay tuned for that. So the audiobook will be available. Anyway, so the book is available from there. If you wouldn't mind, for those of you who do want to purchase it, if you use a link underneath, it's more advantageous for the author and for Sophia if you use their website. It is on Amazon and so forth, but that's the best place to buy it, just FYI. Of course, as a Canadian, I know that buying things from American websites and American sellers can actually be a lot more expensive for shipping and things like that from Amazon. So by no means, don't go out of your way to spend more. I'm just saying if you are in the position to, it is more advantageous to the authors. And that goes for all of your authors that you support, by the way. All right. So as I said, I wanted to just announce the book. And my friend Sarmad says, and he was doing some quality control in the audiobook for me. He says it's hands down Kennedy's best book so far. And I only had to pay him 50,000 pesos in order to make that happen. Okay, so let's go to some questions here. So if you'd like to ask a question, I would like to answer my question for you. Actually, that question for you. And I am going to, because I just find you more annoying than anything in life itself, all of the resistance guys who just flood the things like a bunch of spurges, any moderators, if you could just please remove from the channel anyone who is just really annoying about that. It's just really annoying. I don't believe in free speech, by the way, because free speech is liberalism. Carl Thomas says, how can we get a signed copy of your book? I don't know. I don't even have all the books yet. You know what? When I speak at various conferences, I'll have them. Maybe I'll try to figure something out. Stay tuned, and I'll announce it through my Substack if I figure something out. And I don't have the link for the Substack underneath right now because I just put the book one there. But if you go to meretradition.substack.com, you can find how to get there. I'll make sure I put it through there. It's an email list and so forth. And for all of those who are watching, if you haven't signed up for the Substack, even as a free subscriber, just go to meretradition.substack.com. A lot of my stuff is there. A bunch of podcasts that I don't put on YouTube are actually there. So just FYI. And not all of it's behind a paywall. Everything that is behind a paywall also has a free preview so you can see if you like it or not and all those kinds of things. Okay, questions here. So someone asked a question. Audiobook, we already answered that. Again, moderators, if you can you just get these annoying guys out of here that keep talking about 2012? They're just so annoying. Sarmad says, come to the men's conference in Stratford for a signed copy. That's true. Next year. See, Sarmad's my best promoter. All right. There was a question about the Novus Ordo. If you asked that question, would you mind again? There's just a lot of comments flooding in right now, so I'm losing where I'd like it to be. Here's one. What was the most difficult aspect of writing your new book and your favorite aspect? Very good question. The most difficult aspect of writing the book? You know what? I'm going to have to say there are three because I don't know how to. It's flip a coin or flip 3 coins or whatever. Number one, remaining charitable. And I mean that. Not in just like the whole like being nice thing, but like in the actual sense of beating people over the head does not go over well. It's fun. I've done it at times. There is a time and place, but to try to write a book where people will actually read it, it takes a lot of tact, let's say. That was hard, and I really thank the editors at Crisis for helping me with that. Really good job helping me. That was hard. And by remaining charitable, I don't mean that I had this impression of like just trying to be a jerk or something, but what I mean is it's such a contentious topic. There's so many emotions and sensitivities involved. If you want to be effective, you do have to do your best and try really hard to do so because it behooves you to do it. It's like, why not try to be more effective? And there's a fine line between trying to be charitable in the sense of like being kinder or more understanding, while at the same time not watering down what you're saying. And so there you go. And another aspect that was really difficult was reading modern philosophy. You'll find out if you read the book, modern philosophy is at the heart of modernism. And reading it is so painful because it's really stupid. And I realized reading Kant and Hegel and Hume and all Descartes and all these guys, reading it was like anti-thought. I don't know how else to explain it. It was so tiresome and didn't make any sense in the sense that it just was so different than perennial Christian and the thought of antiquity, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, even Cicero, even Confucius, like even the Eastern philosophers and so forth, who were at least very sensible. This modern stuff is just garbage, but it has its own interior logic, and you have to try to understand it, but it's like you almost have to break your brain to do so. And once you understand it, you realize why the modern world is the way it is and why there's no such thing as right and wrong and so forth. But it's a very complicated thing. It was understanding modern thought and reading modern philosophy was pain. I'd obviously read some before, like when I was in university, we had these philosophy courses and so forth, but it was a pain. And the last thing, I said there was three. The difficult aspect. The last thing was approaching the Novus Ordo in Vatican II, like the liturgical revolution from Vatican II. That was hard to make sure that I crossed all my T's and dotted all my I's. It was just a very onerous process. Let's put it that way. Those are the biggest chapters in the book for a reason. My favorite aspect, I would have to say, you know what? My favorite aspect was reading all of the old philosophy. Like reading all of the Aquinas, reading all of the great encyclicals from the popes. Why that was so fun was it's so spiritually refreshing and nourishing. Sometimes a lot of this scholastic stuff gets this, I'll tell you a quick story. When I reverted to Catholicism, over 10 years ago at this point, whenever it was, I remember someone recommended to me to listen to some stuff, to read St. Thomas Aquinas. And I had an iPhone, and I liked audiobooks, and I still do. And I was going to the gym or whatever. So I looked up Thomas Aquinas on Audible. And I found this lecture series by Peter Kraft, who's done a lot of great stuff on Aquinas and philosophy. And I listened to his series on Thomas Aquinas. And I remember it was like entering into a different country. It was like going into a different world. It was like going to a different realm. And it was the most beautiful, awe-inspiring interior, like, and from an intellectual perspective, it was like the salvation of the intellect. I don't know how to explain it. All of the angst and things that I had been experiencing as this modern person, being taught all this garbage in public school and stuff, when I discovered Aquinas through the way it was taught by Peter Kraft, it was life-changing. I remember I was in the gym, and I think I was doing chest and back or something because I had some dumbbells in my hands. I was walking towards the bench. And I was listening to something from Peter Kraft, and he said something, I can't remember what it was, but I think it was the distinction between essence and existence and forms, essence and form, something like that. All the stuff is laid out in the book. And I started to laugh. And I had to drop the weights and take a knee. Not like in a dramatic way, but it was like I had to take a knee because I was laughing so hard. And why was that? Because the sheer clarity of how Thomas Aquinas speaks about the various layers of existence, it made me realize that I had literally misunderstood reality my entire life. And now I understood it like for the first time. And I was so overjoyed with the joy of the truth that it made me laugh. Why do I tell this story? Because I had to read so much Aquinas and scholasticism and so forth to write this book that I had forgotten how joyful it was to do that. And if I could recommend something to people, which Pius X recommends, going back to the scholasticism is the cure that Pius X offers, and you'll see why when you read the book, that you have to. Because all of this new theology stuff, all of this modernism stuff, all of it is based it's an anti-scholasticism. It's not to say that there's not wonder in the East and so forth. That's not to say that at all. But you have to understand, Thomas Aquinas, he was the great synthesizer of the patristics, which means East and West. So in Aquinas, even though we look at it as like Western, what it really is Catholic. And it's not like Roman versus Greek. He distills the fathers who are Roman and Greek. And it's so valuable. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that question. And yes, the audiobook is coming out soon, Mr. Gonzalez. Reminder to those of you who won't stop talking about the SSPX resistance thing, I'm just going to ban you because you're really annoying. Okay, here's a good question. How long did it take you to write the book? Also, does this parallel your series, They Have Uncrowned Him? Great question. For those who are wondering, I'll answer the second part. If you go to meretradition.substack.com, I will put this on the screen here, meretradition.substack.com. There we go. Substack.com. It's my Substack. A lot of this stuff is also on YouTube. Some of it's not. And I have sections in it. So if you just scroll down, this is on the browser. It's a little different on the app, but it's on the browser. So I have these modern errors, encyclicals I have been recording. I have my book, Charismania, which is released as print and also audio. So if you like audiobooks but don't want to subscribe to something like Audible, you can actually just sign up for the Substack and you'll get that audiobook with each chapter. Now, I was able to do that with each chapter because it's my own self-published thing. That's not the same with Sophia. It's obviously like it's under license with them, so I can't just put that here. Then I have a series where I go over modernism called What Happened to Catholicism, sort of a primer to this book. And then I have a series called They Have Uncrowned Him, where it's a 14-part series going through liberalism. And that's available there. So does it parallel that? It does in a sense. There's a lot of liberalism in modernism. But liberalism is different than modernism. All modernists are liberals. Not all liberals are modernists, if that makes sense. Liberalism is a heresy either way, but modernism is the next level. But it's good to understand liberalism more to understand modernism. Good question. And how long did it take you to write the book? Okay, so writing it, like first draft, I spent about 2 weeks in December of 2023, maybe 3 weeks, November, December then. Had a baby, took a break. My wife had the baby. Took a break till about February. And then I wrote for about 2-3 days a week for about 4 hours each time. Went to the local library and was done by the time I went to England, which was end of May. So February, March, April, May. So 4 months, but it was about 2 days a week. And then some nights here and there. So I don't know. I probably spent the equivalent of like a month of work hours or something. Maybe something like that. I don't know. I write kind of fast, but I can't write for 8 hours. You can't do that. So I would do these spurts. The hardest part, though, was the research. I spent a lot of time reading stuff. But that's a good question. And then, the book was gone through the editors, and then at the end of last year, it was like a long process doing the editing, which included a lot of rewrites. So that was probably like 2 weeks of hours. If you think about a 40-hour work week, something like that. So probably like 150 hours or something. I don't know. Thank you, Sarmad. Like and subscribe. Yep. Oh, Super Flanagan. Thank you. When will Sophia make the audiobook or ebook available? Soon. As I said at the beginning, for those just tuning in, the audiobook has been recorded and submitted. It's just a matter of the various, the platforms that host, Audible and so forth. They have to approve them through their process, which is out of the hands of the publisher. But I have recorded it personally. It has been approved and is in the process, so it will be available. Here's a question. Do you think a reverent Novus Ordo is typically worse than an in-your-face Novus Ordo because all too often they are just modernism, gilded, and tradition? Also partially due to the fact that many of the attendees may be genuinely looking for truth, and when they see these masses and priests, they see that they are better than 99% of the priests out there and think that this must be it, be the all and all. Okay, so basically, is the traditional Novus Ordo is the traditional Novus Ordo, the what's it called? The Unicorn Novus Ordo in Latin, is it worse than the other Novus Ordo? I understand why you're asking this question, because on the one hand, isn't it so annoying? I think everyone can agree. Isn't it so annoying when people will say things like, just have your Latin. Why do you need it to be the Latin Mass? Why can't it just be don't you just want Latin and chant? And often the response from traditionalists is, well, it's not just about the smells and bells. And I understand why the traditionalists say that, but it is also very much about the smells and bells, and that's totally fine. We are human beings with senses, and the liturgy is sacred in time and space. So in time and space, there are sacred objects and things that are for religious use. And that's where they find the fulfillment. And God created them, so that's good. So smells and bells are very important. And it's not a just smells and bells thing, but I understand when people say that. Beyond the smells and bells, it's the content that's the problem. And the Novus Ordo in Latin is still just the Novus Ordo. And I go at the Novus Ordo, very detailed in this book, not just, your basic internet, tweet or something like that. And I've been guilty of that because I have Twitter. But very, I hope, very detailed and very precise about the difficulties and the problems with the Novus Ordo and whatnot. Would it be worse to have it? I mean, in the sense, to be honest, I have personally found that the Latin Novus Ordo is like a gateway drug. I think if you were to make there are certain individuals out there who are kind of ideologically possessed, like some of the Zoomer Groyper crowd that are like very anti-tradition, but are all, what does my friend traditional Thomist say? Nick Cavazos, it's almost like they think if you tilt your head and squint, you can find Mein Kampf and Lumen Gentium or something. They have this they're very like JQ obsessed, but at the same time, like scream and shout about the SSPX being schismatic. And like, if they could go to the Latin Novus Ordo with E. Michael Jones, this is like Disneyland for them. I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. That's a very small group of people. Most people, especially like I've been on pilgrimages with people who, have gone to the Novus Ordo, to the tradition and stuff like that. A lot of people have this story where it's like the gateway drug was the Novus Ordo in Latin. So I don't know if there's a real black and white answer to that. I hope that answers your question. Again, if anyone wants to ask any questions, you're welcome. Bump on a log. FYI, yeah. So-and-so says, Tony Joe says, I'm a pre-Vatican II old school. Pre-Vatican II Catholic. We all knew it was heresy. It was ridiculous. None of it made sense. Then all the nuns quit. It was Bergoglio on steroids. That's one thing that people, I think that last part of your comment there, Mr. Tony Joe, I think that's a great statement. There's this mentality, I think. There's this mentality, I think, where sorry, this is a funny question. I want to make sure I don't leave these. There's this mentality that, things have gotten so bad under Pope Francis. It's kind of like the conservative Catholic mentality. But it was really bad always. John Paul II and Cardinal Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, were much more refined, much more erudite, and let's say kind of sophisticated in their writing and expressions. So it's more obvious for those of us like in the media age with Pope Francis, but this stuff was just as bad or worse back then. So it's a good point. Okay. Here's a good question. My friend Sam Shamoon, he's always blocking people for distracting him. I can see why he does it. I'm not going to do that. I only block you if you annoy me. I'm new to SSPX. What will SSPX do to get new bishops? I've talked about this before. If you look up SSPX bishops or whatever on my channel, you can find you can find that I covered Dom Pagliarani speaking about how they would do it, and basically they'll try to do it the same way Archbishop Lefebvre did. Go through the process, all these sorts of things, to demonstrate the sensus ecclesiae, the sense of the church, that there's no intention to do something cavalier, and if they're backed into a corner where there's no way to continue the traditional priesthood without that manner, then they will go through the same way. My gut tells me that the bishops will be approved. I don't know what that means. That's what my gut tells me. That's all the answer I have. But I would see them probably coming either, this summer or next summer. Pope Francis being really sick, I don't know if that makes it more likely or less likely that he'll approve them. I really don't know. Okay, I'm going to answer this question here, and then I don't want to hear about this stuff again. Not that you're annoying me, sir, but I hear about this a lot. Kennedy, will you ever cover the doctrinal declaration where the SSPX accepted Vatican II in light of tradition? The SSPX did not accept Vatican II in light of tradition in the way that you're presenting it. The 2012 Doctrinal Declaration is something that was created under the leadership of Bishop Fillet, and some people in the SSPX thought it was a mistake, and some people thought it was a prudential move. It never amounted to anything, and nothing came of it. And so I just want to say this. The resistance crowd out there, I understand why you guys have your gripes, but you got to move on. Because Archbishop Lefebvre said that basically there was nothing possible until Rome returned to tradition. And there's many quotes. And a lot of you guys, you cite Archbishop Lefebvre here and you take him out of context, and there's a different one here and stuff. And it really annoys me because, I'm not to sound arrogant, but like I wrote the book on Archbishop Lefebvre and the SSPX. In a sense, I literally did. And I've read more of his stuff, etc., than you can even hold a candle to. And that's just a fact, because I do this for a living. And a lot of the stuff that you guys cite, it's just out of context, or it's It's like proof texting or quote texting from like a Protestant. It's really annoying. There's no roadmap for what it would look like for Rome to return to tradition. What does that mean? Does it mean we wake up tomorrow and you snap your fingers and then all of a sudden it's like the HBO special with Pius XIII and boom, the Latin Mass is back? That's not going to happen. This is a crisis in the church, and it's a mystery of iniquity. And the crisis is a mystery. It's mysterious. The Sedes don't have the answer. The Resistant don't have the answer. The Reverend Novus Ordo don't have the answer. The FSSP doesn't have the answer. The New Theology guys don't have the answer. Bishop Barron doesn't have the answer. To be honest, the best answer probably is the SSPX. That's my opinion. And you know why? Because what you're dealing with the crisis in the church is something impossible. It's impossible. And I mean this. Dealing with the crisis in the church is humanly impossible. None of you, no one has the answer that satisfies all the objections. It doesn't exist anywhere. It doesn't exist. Why? Because on the one hand, obedience is an extremely important virtue, especially to the Pope. On the other hand, if you follow these post-conciliar popes, what the heck are you going to do? Because it's a bunch of heresy and modernism. On the other hand, the Sedevacantists say, well, then maybe there shouldn't be the Pope because all the reasons. That opens up a whole other can of worms. And then the Sedes are fighting each other and scratching tooth and nail and going at each other, and some will have Mass with you, some won't, blah, 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 blah. And some of the bishops might be invalid because of this line or that line. It's a dumpster fire. But you can't follow the Novus Ordo because you'll lose your faith. It's impossible to deal with this mystery of iniquity. It's impossible. So all those people out there and the reason why I support the SSPX from a perspective of just like agreeing with their approach amongst many things is because they do the best job at balancing these sort of non-negotiables. The faith is non-negotiable. Communion with the church is non-negotiable. Yet communion with the church and communion with the Pope in some ways seems like it endangers your faith. But you can't separate from the Pope because that would be against the faith. So what do? I think the best analogy, and I've said this before, and I'm not going to answer any more resistance questions, and I swear, if the guys keep just yelling at me about it, I'm just going to ban you from the thing because it's just annoying. Like, make your own YouTube channel, write your own books if you have all the answers. You have to maintain the sense of the church. You have to maintain the sensus ecclesiae. But at the same time, you can't cooperate and work with many of these people. You just can't. The best analogy I've heard is that the church does not permit divorce, but the church recognizes that in a valid marriage, there can be separation because of abuse. That's all there is. There is a type of separation for traditionalists, and it's a necessity. But it's not a divorce, and there's no remarriage. That's the answer. That's the best analogy I can give. Okay. Here's another question or comment. Greetings from Italy. I'm eager to listen to the audiobook. I'm a Zoomer myself, and I think many of my peers have become gripers just in a reaction to the current school system, for sure. And I just want to say this as well. Sometimes people will say to me, you got to give the gripers more slack. No, I honestly don't think you do, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I'm not like, people will say, you're a boomer. I'm 37 years old, okay? I was a younger guy. One of the things I can't stand, and basically the reason why we have this strange Zoomer mindset, which for some people becomes this victim mentality for many, is because they've been coddled. They've been helicopter parented, et cetera, and it creates spoiled brats. So it's time for people to stop dealing with the spoiled brats having their tantrums like spoiled brats. Life is tough. Get a job. Stop playing video games. Get out of your mom's basement. I live in Canada. My wife's expecting our 7th child. I support my family. As a Catholic podcaster, for goodness sake. If I can do it, you can do it. Get a construction job. Do whatever. Move if you have to. Stop complaining there's no women. Of course a woman's not going to want to marry if you live in your mom's basement. That's all I'll say. And I'm going to be called a boomer for that. Well, the boomers are the ones that gave us the Zoomers, so I don't really know how that works. Speaking of Zoomers I saw that Nick Cavazos My friend said something in the chat. Nick, I'm sorry if I missed your thing. Oh, there it is. To say that I'm excited about this book is an understatement. We needed to work like this for too long. Thank you, Nick. All right. Any more questions? Thank you, Sarmad. You get it. Okay. How can we help those who we care about who have got caught in the Reverend Novus Ordo honey trap? How do we help them care about and see that there are still problems there? Well, the simple answer, and this is one of the reasons I write books, is because that way I can just give an answer that I can just point to. It's in the book. The contents of the Novus Ordo is the problem. The spirit of the Novus Ordo is the problem. The theology of the Novus Ordo is a problem. I believe the Novus Ordo is valid in the sense of it's celebrated by valid priests and that the consecration, all those things. I believe that. I believe many Novus Ordos are invalid for many reasons. Not just my opinion, but like things have been revealed like, well, if you read Archbishop Lefebvre's open letter to confused Catholics, it was clear in the 70s and 80s, many of them were invalid. I believe many of the Novus Ordo sacraments have been invalid. I believe there are probably priests and bishops in some cases out there that aren't valid. I do believe that because there's been so much monkey business. And there especially was in the 70s and 80s. Now, in fairness, it does seem like it was really cleaned up a lot, at least like following the rubrics in most cases. And I believe the rubrics themselves are valid. I follow Father Hess's opinion on the matter, if you look up Father Hess and the Novus Ordo sacraments. But that doesn't mean that the theology in them is Catholic. And I have a chapter on the Novus Ordo, and really what's at stake. There's a heresy of nominalism. It's a philosophical heresy. I explain this in the book. This is at the heart of a lot of modern philosophy and modernism. It's the idea that you call something a thing when it's not really that thing. So it's a denial of the nature or essences of a thing, more or less. So as a non-nominalist, like as a sane person, as a non-modern in philosophy, I believe that when I look at a tree, it looks like a tree, but it is a tree. It doesn't just appear to be, like it is. Its essence is, and I can know its essence because I know the essences of things because the faculties of my soul allow me to do that. And this is scriptural. If you go to, you know what, maybe I'll just actually bring it up. I'll pull a Sam Shamoun here. And I'm going to bring up the book of Genesis to show you what I mean. Okay, I don't know the Bible off by heart like our good friend Sam. Okay, I think it's in the next chapter. Heavens were finished, da-da-da-da. Talks about the rivers, tree of life. The last chapter. Okay, last chapter. God made two great lights. Da-da-da. Why can't I find it? Oh yeah, and God made the beasts of the earth. Beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and cattle, and everything that creepeth on the earth after its kind. And God saw that it was good. This is why evolution is ridiculous, by the way, according to its kind. So there are groupings of animals. And he said, let us make man in our own image, and let him have dominion over the fishes of the sea, the fowls of the air, the beasts, the whole earth, and everything creeping, all the things. And God created man to his own image. To the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. This is why theology of the body begins with an error. The image of God is not found in male and female. It's found in the soul. So God created man to his own image, etc. Meaning new thing, male and female he created them. Okay. And God said, behold, I give you, I have given you every herb bearing seed upon the earth, and all the trees that have in themselves seed of their own kind, etc., etc., and to all the beasts, and to every fowl of the air, and to all that move upon the earth, da-da-da-da-da. And so it was done. Okay, so God brings forth the animals to Adam, and Adam knows what the animals are. Why is that important? Nominalism is this idea that we look at stuff. Thanks, we got it. We look at stuff and we say this seems like this, rather than this is this. So Adam knows the animals are. He knows what they are. He knows what the trees are. He knows his wife. He says, this is woman. He knows her nature. Nominalism basically denies this. This is why we have transgenderism. We know that the essence of the Novus Ordo is there's something wrong with it. You can call it the Roman Rite, but it isn't the Roman Rite because it doesn't contain in it what you would need to have to be the Roman Rite. That's the best way to talk about it. That's in my book. It requires a book to do so. Okay. Okay, last thing I'm going to say to you here, Mr. Vatican II teaches heresy. The new SSPX no longer condemns Vatican II or the Novus Ordo from the pulpit. That isn't true. I attend the SSPX. That isn't true. So, last time I'll let you talk or you're banned. Okay, where is it? Kennedy, what is your next book you hope to work on? I'm hoping to work either on a fiction or a book on the kingship of Christ. I've started both. I've stalled with both. If I miss your questions, just ask them again. Amparo Valdivia. We rely on divine providence. He has the perfect will. Do your best. Believe the Catholic faith. Be restored. Do your best. Believe, or will follow low Christ passion. I don't know what that means, but I think you... here he goes. Do you believe the Catholic Church will be restored, or will it have to follow the passion of Christ soon? I know in this matter, divine providence will be the only answer. Okay. I do believe the Catholic Church will be restored. I don't think we're in the end times. Christ says, neither the hour nor the day. It could be. Pius X even said in 1903 in his encyclical E Supremi Apostolatus that it was like, maybe we are. I don't know if we are. So if we're not, there just seems to be a lot of stuff that has to take place beforehand. I'm not saying I believe in various prophecies and so forth that are like just private things. I do believe it'll be restored. I do. I don't know what that'll look like, but I don't think we're in the end times. There are hypothetical things, reign of Mary, all these kinds of things. Maybe. But I do believe the church will be restored. Okay. Another question. Do you think Pope Francis, with his failing health, will endorse the SSPX making new bishops, or do you think the SSPX will continue to get stonewalled like they did in the 1980s? My gut tells me he'll approve them. And that doesn't mean he'll solve any of the issues. It doesn't mean he'll go back. But they're going to ask for permission, like Archbishop Lefebvre asked for permission. The resistance bros are going to say it's modernist to do that. It's modernist to ask for permission. They're going to ask for permission. I think they would get it. But I don't think that will solve anything as far as, I think it'll solve a lot of things in the sense of a lot of people who were, really on the fence and need, a signature to go to the SSPX will obviously be happy with that. But those who are very committed to being against the SSPX and are really imbibed with modernism will just find another reason to be stupid about it. And they'll say, well, yeah, they're not schismatic and they're not excommunicated and they're approved, but you still can't go there because canonical mission, bro. It's like, okay, good job. That's my answer. Good question. What are your thoughts on the possibility of a future pope restoring the Roman Rite, meaning the TLM, but with some vernacular and other small concessions? I mean, that would have been the 65 missile. But it was an experimental missile and it was abandoned. This is what I think is going to happen. I think the Novus Ordo is just going to die because the young clergies just don't care about it. They just don't care. And the older clergy that have their Catholic sense about them have all wanted to learn the Latin Mass. The young clergy just don't care about the Novus Ordo. They say it because they have to. And that's what they think. There's a lot of them out there. So I think the Novus Ordo is just going to die. I think that if there was a good pope that, like, let's just say, because, you know, miracles happen. You know, let's just say a particular pope is elected. Let's just say, like this cardinal from Jerusalem, Pizzaballa. Let's just say he is elected pope and turns out he's great and he has this like Catholic sense and he loves Christ and whatever. And he's you know, because he's in the Holy. This is my kind of hypothesis about him. He's in the Holy Land. There's tons of traditional rites. He's used to the traditional things because despite all the Novus Ordo stuff, a lot of these traditional ceremonies have always taken place in the Holy Land and they've never really changed, like since like Christendom and so forth. So he's used to that. He's steeped in that. Maybe he comes up and he's like, we are going to go back to we're on a 5-year plan to go back to the traditional Mass. Let's just say he says something like that. Or like first thing he says is, Stanta locta can't erase it. You know, from now in perpetuity, we're going back to understanding quo primum. No one can say you can't say the traditional Latin Mass. Any bishop who says you can't, I will, you know, remove him from his diocese or something like that. Like he makes it very clear, black and white. Basically like what Summorum Pontificum was from Benedict Ratzinger, but with more teeth. And I just don't think the Novus Ordo will survive that long. I think it'll just be the older generation that don't want to learn or hate tradition. And I think anyone who has a Catholic sense will want to learn it and probably just start saying it more often. And I think it'll just be a thing that peters out. Could there be some other reform? Could be. I don't know. But I don't even think it's necessary. I hope that answers your question. All right, Vatican II teaches heresy. You are banned. Bye-bye. Okay. There's a question here. Do you run your released book through your society priest you're friends with? How do they respond? When I self-publish something, I make sure that I have strong guidance from my priests, yes. And friends. I hire friends to be editors that are good theological minds and good at English. Good at English is important. That's why I never get Sarmad to do my books. Just a curiosity, do you follow or have you studied any other Italian authors besides Roberto de Mattei? Pius X. He's Italian. Cardinal Ottaviani. I don't read in Italian very often. I should. I can, but I don't read in it like for pleasure. So, but yeah, good question. Any other questions? Yeah, someone says demographics is destiny. Yeah, that's true. All right, if you have any questions. Ooh, here's one. Kennedy, after turning your book into a leather-bound edition as promised, would love to get you on my podcast to discuss your books in the church. Sure. Go for it. You can go for it. Good evening from Catania, Italy. Buonasera. Fratello. Mr. Laurenti. All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Bellator es Christu. Thank you for that kind words. Vinicius Tomé says, Vinicius Tomé, here in Brazil, 2 Novus Ordo priests that are very famous on the internet converted, quote unquote, to the SSPX. One of them said that after making it public, a lot of priests sought him wishing to do the same. Yeah, something similar happened in Poland. There was like a dozen priests that joined the SSPX in a short amount of time. Quick question, how do we get a signed copy? I don't know. I'm going to have to figure something else to do that. Best way to purchase the books? This one, go to Sophia. The link's underneath. And then anything I've self-published, just go through Amazon because that's where it is. There's a question here. Would you consider doing an audiobook of the Bible? Yes, I would. It's just a huge undertaking. It's like a 70-hour book. It'll take 250 hours to record or something. It's a lot. So how do it just has to be something that I can justify doing professionally because that's just a lot of hours. But I would like to, but it's just tough. So I don't know. Somebody wants to do a GoFundMe. I'm kind of half joking. It would cost, I mean, the equivalent of doing that book, the amount of time it would take and the effort and the software and like just the file sizes, and it's a lot. Like to do it as it's like $15,000 of work basically. If you think about it, the amount of hours, it's like 250 to 300 hours. It's about 3 hours per. It's about 3 hours per 1 hour for recording. So if it's a 75-hour book, we're at 150. We're at 225. And that's if it's only 75, but it's a bit longer. It's a lot. It's a lot. Oh, great. Thank you. Whoever, Kay, just got the book. Thank you. Yes, my book will be on audiobook, Amparo Valdivia. And how do you know what to search up to find the resources you need for any particular topic? How do I know? That's the question. Well, I do a lot of reading. How do you research your book? And I'll put this next question up so I don't lose it. I do a lot of reading. And the internet makes it really easy. And it's easy to make fun of things like Wikipedia, but that mentality of, you read something and then there's a link to something to explain that, that really helps you just keep going. So I use the internet for most stuff. I have a lot of physical books, don't get me wrong, but I do a lot of research on the internet, a lot of stuff from the archive, digitized stuff. And just reading things, one thing leads to another. So when I wanted to understand modernism and write about it, I would just I'd read a paragraph or read a section and be like, okay, what are the 3 themes here? What are the themes here in this? And then I would just look those up and be like, what does this philosopher say? What's this, and then I would read the other, he would, Pius X would cite other popes. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to go read that work by that pope now. And he's citing other popes. Okay, I'll go read that one. So you just kind of keep following the breadcrumbs. That's kind of how I do everything. That's how I do stuff for my podcast and my YouTube is I just keep reading. One of the reasons I love doing what I do is I get to read for a living. And I just keep reading stuff or listening. And I consider audiobooks reading. I do. Because you got to remember, people weren't en masse literate until about 120 years ago. people were read to, even the religious orders. A lot of time the monks and stuff were actually illiterate, but they memorized the Gregorian chant and they were read to while at mealtime and stuff, and memorized their catechisms and their psalms and stuff. Like, being read things is reading. There's nothing wrong with that. Christ says the faith comes through hearing. He doesn't say it comes through reading. He says it comes through hearing. Anyway, but and one of the things that's interesting is St. Augustine, when he was speaking about St. Ambrose, one of the reasons he thought St. Ambrose was such a genius is because St. Ambrose would read without moving his lips. People didn't read in their heads. They read out loud for people to hear. That was how you read. And he was amazed at the fact that he would read without moving his lips. That was like a new way. Funny enough. Okay. So that's how I do it. Okay, here's a question. If the curia surrounding the Pope have access to his auto pen, do you think they may use his pen to deny the SSPX new bishops? I have no idea. I don't know. Ideally, would the SSPX move back to the pre-55 Holy Week like SSPICK? Correction, not in your... FSSP and ICK haven't really moved back to the pre-55 unless they disobey Rome. And here's what I mean by that. They're not supposed to say the prayer for the Jews, by the way. They're not supposed to say praying for the perfidious Jews. They're supposed to use the hippy-dippy ecumenical prayer made by Ratzinger, technically, which is a huge part of Holy Week. So if they're not doing that, then it's not really, there's no lot missing. Oh, the Holy Week thing. Well, the SSPX doesn't do they do the 55, but they don't do the ones after that. And a lot of what happens at the SSPX Holy Week is pre-55, because there was kind of this chaotic period where everything was getting reformed a lot, and Archbishop Lefebvre kept a lot of the things, although they did change the vestments for Palm Sunday and stuff, and people get upset about that. I think there are very strong arguments for going back to pre-55. I do, if I may, and I won't die on this hill, but just my personal opinion is that sometimes I do think there's a conflation of the paradigm of having made the reforms and the content of what's in them. What I mean by that, I fully agree that the sweeping reforms to Holy Week were used as a Trojan horse to justify sweeping reforms to the liturgy as such. I agree with that. I also don't think that when you go to the 55 that you are experiencing anything that is a danger to your faith or makes you have un-Catholic experiences. I don't think that at all. I was a Novus Ordo Catholic. I went to the SSPX. I went to their 55 Holy Week. It did not seem like the Novus Ordo to me at all. It never has. I follow most of it in my Father Lassant's Missal. There's some certain stuff missing. Also, historically, many Catholics did not go and never went to the Holy Week liturgies because they were largely monastic. We as a family do not go to all of the Holy Week liturgies. We have 6 children, 9 and under, babies teething, toddlers potty training, all these things, bedtimes, naps, whatever. It's half an hour to get to. We don't do it, and none of them are obligations. I think in this age of trying to grab onto every possible thing, people get really invested into these sort of disputed elements within the church. And I think there are very strong arguments, especially for liturgists and so forth, about why the pre-55 is better. I get that. It's just not something I lose sleep over as much as others. Because on a practical perspective, I don't even know if I could drive anywhere within like 6 hours in my own country within my borders where I could even go to the pre-55. So for me, it's non-existent. That's just how I look at it. I don't know if that makes sense. Yes, you're right. The Christ the King does do the pre-55, but you got to ask about that prayer for the Jews. Got to ask about that prayer for the Jews. It's a good question. Do you have any recommendations for my new parents at Mass? Do you have any recommendations for new parents at Mass? Dealing with our son, it's difficult to be present at Mass. Unfortunately, we get distracted. Getting distracted because you take care of children is just a way of life. And here's the thing, my friends. You can go read the biography of Saint Therese of Lisieux. Therese of Lisieux was like 5 or 6 years old. And her mom was like worried she was going to be like this spoiled brat when she grew up because she couldn't handle her. She couldn't go to Mass, anything. Children under the age of reason. Well, okay, let's put it this way. you can't fulfill your Sunday obligation as an infant or a child with no reason because you can't pray in that sense, right? Like, obviously you can learn to pray, but it's not. So historically, especially in the age of like village churches and stuff, when there's many masses going on, parents would go to mass without their children. Children would be watched by the grandparents. Grandparents would go at a different time, that sort of thing. That was super common. It's very common in places like St. Mary's, Kansas, where there are lots of Catholic families living there and they have that lifestyle, and there's like 5 masses every Sunday. And the reason is because, yeah, little kids just can't handle, like whenever there's a high, like we have low mass most of the time. Whenever there's a high mass, my wife and I are like, oof, this is going to be a day. It's going to be 2 hours or whatever, and it's like right through nap and thing and getting hungry. And, oh man, those little ones are just, it's going to be rough. And, like sometimes it's like, got to put the baby in the stroller and walk around the block, You have to. It's just the way it is. The crying room is like, the other day we had Palm Sunday with a high mass. It was like 3 hours. Really proud of my boys up there serving the whole time, like, still as statues, stiff as a board, keeping their postures and stuff. But my little ones, like, we're back in the cry room, and I said to one of my buddies, I said, man, it's a bloodbath back here. Like, it's just like, it's a lot of babies and stuff, and they're just losing. That's just the way it is. So don't sweat it. It'll just come with time, and you're there fulfilling your obligation, and that's your state in life. So just don't sweat it too much. Parents need to not sweat stuff too much. Like, you're not going to lose, like, I'm not saying to you, but like in general, your children aren't going to lose their faith because they didn't attend a high mass when they're 3. Do you know what I mean? They're not even going to remember that. You just have to live a Catholic life and catechize them. And obviously as they age, they get more responsibilities and so forth. And there just is a switch that's flipped at a certain point, usually around 3-4 years old, where it's just like, oh, they just sit through mass now. And okay, they make little mistakes, and I have to, my 5-year-old, I have to remind him, okay, don't do this or that sort of thing. But like, he was there in the pew for the whole time, like went to the bathroom one time or whatever, no big deal. 2 years ago, it was a nightmare. But there's just a switch that's flipped. And you can't force it. You cannot force it. And it's so much of a nature-nurture thing. Some kids are just a lot calmer when they're little than others. You can sort of help it a bit, but assuming you're parenting your kids well, if there's these idiosyncrasies that they have, these are just things that you can't get out of them. And you just have to grit your teeth and bear it and embrace it, because it's the cross that you've been given to get you to heaven. I hope that answers. Question. Do you ever read the Latin Vulgate? Yes. But I do it for research purposes, not for personal reasons of meditation or anything. And I do it online through drbo.org, DeweyReamsBibleOnline.org. You're right, Mr. Laurenti. Low Mass in the evening is music to your ears. I, as a parent of a bunch of little kids, Low Mass is my best friend. I love it. Your book is coming. Thank you, Carl. All right, I'll answer a couple more questions. I got to run. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in. And if you have any more questions, I might have time for one or two. And if I missed your questions, I'm sorry, but there's a bunch of stuff, and it's hard to see it all. One-man show here, no producers or anything. The link for the book is underneath for those of you who are interested. For those who want an audiobook, it will be available soon. I did record it and submit it. It just takes time to be available. I will be releasing some preview audio chapters on my Substack, FYI. And if you do want to have more access to stuff that I do, and by the way, I'll just show some links here by the way, What Happened to Catholicism, available from Sophia Institute Press. Link for that underneath. If you do want to have, and this is the Dewey Reams Bible, for the one person who asked about the Dewey Reams Vulgate thing, this is great because you can actually have the Dewey Reams and the Vulgate side by side. I love it. It's drbo.org. I use it all the time. But if you go to meretradition.substack.com, this is where I do a lot of stuff. And I promise you it's worth it. The best part that people have told me is that we have a chat, which it's not on the screen. It's up there where I'm moving my mouse around. And I don't want to show it because I don't want to show people's questions because I don't like to show that on screen. But you can see up there where there's a little chat bubble. And I do a subscriber chat, and people ask questions all the time. It's like this Q&A here, but you get to ask a lot more questions. And then I do full shows on it. So if you're into that, you sign up for like $8 a month. And that's it. All right. Let's see if there's any last questions in there. Is there a book on the errors of Vatican II? My book, basically, in many ways. And are there any books or videos that explain the errors of theology of the body? I do talk about theology of the body and its errors in this book, FYI. Videos, I don't know. I should probably do it, but you can only take so many shots all at once. So I got to be careful. I mean, I went after the charismatic renewal, go after the Novus Ordo, go after the modernists, going after liberalism. Sometimes you gotta take a break from making so many friends. Thank you, Mr. Lauren T. Going to purchase the book. God bless you. And that's all I got. That is all I got for you, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm out of gas. So I'll talk to you soon. Check the link underneath. And God bless you all. Oh, I forgot to say, go to kennedyhall.ca if you want to go with me to the Holy Land. I can't believe I forgot to plug that. If you want to go to the Holy Land, once in a lifetime pilgrimage. And I'll show you that quickly right now. kennedyhall.ca. That's my website. Sorry about my ugly mug being on there. kennedyhall.ca. Holy Land. Boom. Information there. Find out more. Once in a lifetime pilgrimage. SSPX priest is our chaplain. Going to all the amazing spots. Jerusalem, Nazareth, Mount of Beatitude, Sea of Galilee, everything. kennedyhall.ca. And /holy-land, kennedyhall.ca, /holy-land. If you just go to kennedyhall.ca, you can just, boom, click the thing, click the Holy Land, link is there, and you're laughing. All right. God bless you all, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. I messed that up. Oh well. All right. See you later. Bye-bye.